you hear about these names who supposedly just take the out of their peers, and they usually play a few years up. And Shea Lacey's always been one of those players, both for United and for the England age groups. He's been in that group with Ethan Ranieri, Mikey Moore, Chris Rigg, Harry Amas, and he's always stood out as, for me, oftentimes the most impressive player out of that group.
Jay here of Stretford, Paddock. This is Academy Review. Joining me as always is Finn, otherwise known as Academy Scoop, here to talk about all the latest news when it comes to Manchester United youngsters and single out a few players and get into a little bit more about them. How are we doing, bro? You good?
Very good, thank you. How are you, Jay?
I'm all right. We did get the memo again, didn't we, me and you? We're coordinated.
We're always
You're
matching.
a bit classier than I am. Yours is more of a cardigan piece. Mine's more just the bog standard freeze dry.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Well said. That's what I often tell myself. We'll start off, right? We're not going to do this in sort of chronological order, shall we say. We're going to start off with the under-18s against Liverpool, because we're going to not just focus on that game, but also talk about one or two players, in particular Shea Lacey. Take it away, really. Tell us a little bit about that game, and then we can get into a little bit about Shea Lacey, who's a player that a lot of United fans will know and want to hear more about.
Yeah, so that was the big attraction before the game. Was obviously it's a big game, it's against Liverpool, big rivals, but a lot of people were looking forward to seeing Shea Lacey making his return from injury. Not been an easy 14 or so months for him, in and out of the side with different injuries, and I think everyone is just hopeful to see him back and sustain a run of games where he can stay fit, because when he does play and when he does feature, he's an outstanding player that I think everyone enjoys watching. He makes things happen, he's creative, so technical, and so dangerous in the final third. So that was the attraction going into it. But as well as that, it was important because United are trying to stay in the title race. Man City have kind of caught up with them. Obviously the 4-0 loss a couple of weeks ago hasn't helped their title chances, and we've seen with all the injuries in the side, United have kind of come off the pace a little bit recently. So this was an important game to try and get back on track, and it was a bit of a mixed bag. It didn't go quite as planned. So United were going into it equal on points per game with City, whereas Liverpool are second to bottom in the league with just 3 wins and 2 draws out of 13 games.
Pathetic.
Absolutely pathetic. But that didn't stop us from cocking it up. So yeah, we started brightly. Victor Musa, one of his better games in a United shirt that I've seen, and early on in the first half he thought he'd had it in the back of the net, but it was chalked off for offside. But shortly afterwards he did find his first goal and the opener for United. It was a Jim Thwaites corner to the head of Albert Mills, who brought it down for Victor Musa to head in, kind of looped over the keeper, put United ahead. I'd say again, Jim Thwaites, just fantastic from set pieces. We've made our comparisons to David Beckham, of course, and it just seems like from whatever position he's in, whether it's a corner or a direct free kick from almost any angle, you always have a feeling that he's going to make something happen, and often he does. He's just got such kind of finesse and accuracy on his deliveries, and you're never in doubt. And we've been so dangerous as a result from corners since he's become the kind of regular taker of these. And so Victor Musa got the scoring open, and he very quickly found a brace. Another header. It was a Reece Monroe cross to his head, and simple as that. 2-0 up in the first half. It was deserved. United with a better team, pressed high, were dominant. So not much more you could ask for.
This is where the sad bit comes in it.
Yeah. So I think we've seen defensively in the last few weeks, we haven't quite been on it, lacking a little bit of kind of proactivity in how we close down the spaces in the midfield, and I think we've been allowing them to get shots off a little bit easier. So Liverpool found a kind of easy goal on the edge of the box. Their attacker was able to just get a shot off really easily, and no one was closing him down. And so it was 2-1 going into the break. And again, it wasn't what we expect from this side, who usually are just so dominant from start to finish under Adam Lawrence. We always look so well drilled and so kind of tactically coherent, but it hasn't always been the case, and we're missing people like Amir Ibrahimov, Gabriel Biancheri, Jack Fletcher's now a regular in the under-21s. So there's a lot of absentees that are kind of affecting how they're playing. But we went into the second half with a lot more momentum, kind of a good response. Again, Jim Thwaites was just outstanding. He really kind of, every time he's on the ball, he just looks like he's got so much time. He's always like a step ahead. I think technically and mentally, he's superb. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops physically in terms of whether he can adapt to playing against under-21s, in terms of maybe growing a little bit taller and bulking out a little bit. But he's a player that I'm really enjoying watching. And also Godwill Kokonki, he's been in and around the first team setup recently, and he's performed brilliantly. His ball playing is fantastic, especially when he's playing for the under-18s. I think he's looked a little bit more conservative when he plays against higher age groups, but that's going to come with time. And defensively, he's solid. There's not many players at under-18 level who are going to match him physically, so he's able to bully players in duels and things like that. So United came back into it, but in the end, they fell short. Yeah. It was another kind of lapse of concentration and just way too easy for Tyler Martin to get his shot off. And it was a deflected shot, in fairness, but it just went past Will Murdoch. And but there was a positive.
Go on.
Because we saw, obviously, Shea Lacey.
Yes, let's focus on the positive, because let's not focus on the fact that United had a disallowed goal, which I didn't see, but obviously we were robbed in that respect.
Absolutely
and
robbed.
The Scousers go and have a deflected goal, which is obviously very lucky.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Shea Lacey, a player that I think, I'm right in saying, you can correct me here because you know far more than I do, but 18 months ago, a lot of chat about him, a lot of hype, if we can use that word.
Yeah.
Everyone's saying, look, Shea Lacey is the next big thing, one to keep an eye out. Then he gets these injuries and it just seems to have sort of dimmed a little bit, but now you're saying, look, he's back in the team and hoping to see the best of him.
Yeah, he's one of those players that right from the younger age groups, you hear about these names who supposedly just take the piss out of their peers, and they usually play a few years up, and Shea Lacey's always been one of those players, both for United and for the England age groups. He's been in that group with Ethan Ranieri, Mikey Moore, Chris Rigg, Harry Amas, and he's always stood out as, for me, oftentimes the most impressive player out of that group. And obviously now we see Mikey Moore and Ethan Ranieri impressing for the first team for Spurs and Arsenal respectively. And so unfortunately he's kind of fallen behind that because of these injuries, which is never good to see. Must be so frustrating for him first and foremost, not to be able to express himself on the pitch and string together that availability over a run of matches. I think it was a thigh injury that had him out for a quad injury that had him out for ages, and I think there was a reoccurrence there, and I think since then there have been a few kind of smaller knocks. But yeah, he's a player that fans they tune into games just to watch him. He's that kind of talent. You saw it with someone like Kobbie Mainoo, and going back, Paul Pogba, Marcus Rashford, these players who single-handedly make you want to watch these games to see what they're about, and he's definitely one of them. And you just hope now that he's back in the squad. You hope that he can stay fit, especially with the important run of games that United have coming, both in the league and in the FA Youth Cup. United playing Chelsea this week in the FA Youth Cup, and he could be vital to hopefully getting some silverware. I think if he wasn't injured, if he hadn't struggled in the last 14 months or so, there's no way he wouldn't be in and around the first team at this point. Not necessarily starting or getting loads of minutes, but I think he'd be in the setup by now. And so, yeah, just fingers crossed for him. He's able to come back and express himself and shine on the pitch.
Does he to you look like he's getting there back to the player that we've seen?
I think he hasn't lost a step of pace. He came on and instantly United were kind of battering Liverpool's goal. Obviously nothing ended up coming of it, and we suffered that bitter draw in the end. But he's someone that comes on and he just makes things happen, and he did that again. He created two really big chances for himself, cutting in off the right side and fashioning shots, and also setting up teammates. There was one moment where he beat his man on the edge of the box and then took it on the outside and put a great cross in with his right foot. Victor Musa, I think. And so he's got so many different kind of solutions in loads of different scenarios where he seems to just have the right decision making and knows what to do. He's intelligent and mature on the ball. And he got stuck right back in. And he also looked like he's maybe grown a little bit and like physically and looked a little bit stronger and kind of more robust in his duels. So I think it was really positive to see the way he came back. And also we saw James Overy, who hasn't made his United debut yet until this weekend. He came in from Perth Glory in the summer, very exciting signing, but hasn't been able to get started. And so good to see him make his debut. He was only on for about 15 minutes, but he looked bright, played a lot of passes forward to Shea Lacey, and they seem to have like a nice little connection, which hopefully we can see more of this season. But yeah, so positives to be taken from what was in the end a bit of a result.
No, definitely. I'm looking forward to seeing more of Shea Lacey. You do worry when young players get these injuries, don't you? Because I had a little bit of a reminder at the weekend. Was it Ethan Laird who scored, I think, for Birmingham against, was it Newcastle?
Yeah.
And
was it the first minute? Or very early on?
Yeah, early doors.
Yeah.
And it's just, I remember he had them problems with injuries and he was such a talented youngster.
Yeah.
And you just worry, like, you know, could a similar thing happen where he just loses a little bit or it just scuppers his development slightly? But from what you're saying, you feel pretty confident that he's still that player.
You definitely hope so, yeah. There's no way of knowing until he does get his chance. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he can stay fit, but you never know. But I think all we can do now is just get behind him and hope that he can kick on. It is sad when you look back at a player like Ethan Laird, because I think at the time in that age group with players like Mason Greenwood and James Garner, he was always seen as one of the brighter players in that group and seen as someone who, if it weren't for the injuries, could have become an established United player. Because I remember he was so good on the ball, absolutely rapid, could play a great cross, a real kind of modern fullback. So I'm glad to see he's doing well at Birmingham. But yeah, it's never a good sign when a player is getting these constant kind of consecutive injuries.
Yeah, so hopefully Shea Lacey can just keep going, and the type of player United fans love. That type of player. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Loves to, like, great on the ball, going past players. Yeah. Exciting. Play with, we're crying out for.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's also important to note that he has a good place in this Amorim system. Obviously, it's a complete hypothetical and it could be far down the line. But his profile would fit really well in one of those number 10 roles, because he can go on the outside, but he does thrive on these in the pockets, picking up the ball kind of between the lines and turning at goal and making things happen. He's really, brilliant in small spaces and great at receiving the ball under pressure and wriggling his way out of dangerous areas. And he is a player that United fans love to watch. So hopefully we see him kick on now.
Yeah, big time. Well, forget about the result. The main thing was that Shea Lacey is, getting there back to his best.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the league's still open. United, I think we are 3 points off City, but with a game in hand.
Well, there you go then.
On points per game, we're still level at the top, and hopefully now we can kind of get back into things and secure our title.
I mean, obviously, like you said there, if you're missing key players as well, if players are going up to the 21s, or absolutely, it's going to affect you. But well done to Adam Lawrence's team, because they're obviously they're smashing it out there. Don't always seem like I'm being too negative on them. What else have you got for us?
We had we'll talk about the other under 18 game last week. Again, not the most positive result, but we'll talk about it anyway. It was the under 18s against West Ham. They played in London in the PL Cup quarter-finals. United, going into the game, were hoping to continue their title defence as PL Cup champions. We beat City in this competition in the final last year, and it was part of that kind of domestic treble of sorts. Unfortunately, it didn't end as hoped.
Sounds very sort of almost Jose Mourinho-esque. Treble of sorts.
Treble of sorts. Yeah, we'll take it. It wasn't quite a traditional treble. We were missing the FA Youth Cup. Yeah. It was a treble, and I think that's all that matters.
That's the real quiz.
We won't dwell on it too long. It was a 2-2 draw, so the same as the Liverpool result. Ended up going to penalties, and unfortunately, Victor Musa and Louie Bradbury missed their penalties, which sent United out of it. Obviously, it's it shows great courage to step up at this level and take a penalty anyway, especially for Louie Bradbury, who's still an under 16 technically. So, take nothing away from them. And United performed well throughout the game, and I think they were quite unlucky at times. Again, some of that kind of lapse of defensive concentration in terms of closing down those spaces and letting easy shots off. It was James Scanlon and Tyler Fletcher who were the goal scorers. There was a bit of confusion because at first it looked like Kokonki had scored off, surprise, surprise, a Jim Thwaites corner. But it was actually Tyler Fletcher who got the last nudge of the ball across the line. Again, Jim Thwaites was so bright in this game. I think he's another player that fans really love watching. I saw a lot of kind of positive responses on Twitter after the game, people making compilations of his performance and stuff like that. Because he's so silky. He's always got a few seconds on the ball spare. And really excited to see how he develops. But we won't dwell on it too much, but not United's day. And they unfortunately crash out of the PL Cup.
It is, obviously that is frustrating, but there's always positives in there from these young players. And I don't want to be like, every day's a school day, it's a learning curve, but there's something that obviously they are learning. They're still young players, and even regardless of the result, there's still positive aspects of this game.
In fact, sometimes a loss can be more valuable in the learning process than winning every game. Especially for someone like Louie Bradbury, who's 16, stepping up to take a penalty. It shows great courage, and also to miss the penalty, how he responds is then really important. How he steps back into his role in the squad. So the players will learn a lot from it, and I think there's still a lot to look forward to this season. So
definitely, there's no shame in missing penalties or getting knocked out of the cup by penalties, and these lads have absolutely been smashing it, and I look forward to seeing more of them in the future and hearing you talk about them a lot more in the future as well. What about the under-21s?
Something bright to talk about, which is a bit of a...
I didn't want to be that guy,
relief.
but it's about time.
Yeah. It's funny because I think the under-18s, for the last few weeks, the under-18s and under-21s have almost swapped positions.
Right, okay.
I think earlier in the season, there was a bit of worry about the form of the under-21s. A lot of people were asking questions, how can the under-18s be so brilliant, and then the under-21s seemingly losing a lot of games, and I think we were right at the bottom of the PL2 table at one point. We now sit in third, right in a potential title race.
Wow.
Obviously it's actually a different system now with the PL2. It goes to playoffs, which the top 16 teams go into, which is a continuation of the Americanization of football.
Well, that's a different topic, maybe for a different podcast.
Yeah.
We won't go into it just now, but I hear your pain there.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of that. But a really bright performance at Lee Sports Village against a strong side in Tottenham. It was Jack Moorhouse was the star of the show again.
A player you've highlighted a few times on this podcast.
Yeah.
Someone you really enjoy watching.
Honestly, I think he just gets better and better every week. Again, like we talked about Shea Lacey's injuries, he's another one who's had a rough time in the last few years with injuries, but he stepped back into the team and it looks like he hasn't missed a beat. Honestly, he's fantastic. Ball carrying is so important in today's game, and I think he's one of the most impressive ball carriers I've seen at this level in a little while. Just the way, he picks up the ball and he's constantly looking to drive forward. He's got a lot of pace and power on the ball, and he can just cut through any team's midfield and really make things happen in the final third. We saw, again, Morgan Rogers is a player that he gets compared to a lot. We saw him play really well against Spurs' first team, and I think that's a profile that is becoming increasingly valuable in these modern sides where, ball carriers seem to be one of the few solutions to the kind of rigid positional defensive structures of today's game. And so that's one of the reasons that I've said on Twitter that I think he's someone that could really get pushed now closer to the first team. We've seen him brought into first team training post-Christmas, I think, and if he continues the way he's going, I'd love to see him get on the bench at least before the end of the season and hopefully get some minutes, because I think he's got a lot that he could bring, probably from that left 10 role as kind of a more kind of attacking midfielder. But brilliant again. And it was also a bright game from Sekou Kone.
Yeah.
I think he's growing throughout the season. Took him a while to get up to speed following his signing in the summer, but he's looked more kind of composed on the ball, a little bit more robust physically, because like we've mentioned in the past, he didn't actually have any formal gym work until he joined United, so he's looked a little bit lightweight.
Was it Oldham the other week where
yeah.
He was like, I
5-0
saw,
win.
yeah, there was a lot of clips of doing the rounds of compilations of his performance.
Yeah.
And you point out that he had a very good game.
Definitely.
So,
yeah.
This is what we want to see and hear from the players. We have to be patient as well, don't we? Because I remember sort of talking about Sekou Kone on the paper talk a few months ago, not long after he'd arrived, and people were like, if Kobe Mainoo can play midfield at 18 for Manchester United, so why can't this lad? And it's like, I think it's we have to temper expectations a little bit.
Yeah, not everyone's Kobe Mainoo.
Exactly. It's so rare for a teenager to get into Manchester United's midfield. And also, you don't want to throw these kids in too soon.
Yeah, I think there's a certain category of player where you watch them for the under-18s or the under-21s and you just know. You just know instantly. And Kobe Mainoo was always one of those players. For people that didn't get a chance to watch him for the youth sides, he just stood out head and shoulders above every other player on the pitch, no matter the game, no matter the opposition. And you just knew with someone like him that unless he becomes injury prone or something happens off the pitch, you know that they're nailed on to make it. So I think it can kind of skew people's perceptions of youth development at some point, in some cases, because then people are saying, well, if he can do it, then surely this guy can as well. But
it's a great point, Finn. I remember years ago when I watched the Ravel Morris and Paul Pogba, Will Keane, Ryan Tunnicliffe team. So many of those players were quality. And it's not just the ones that stood out were Ravel and Paul Pogba.
And
Jesse, but Jesse was a good player in that team. We're not getting me wrong, but I think...
But he wasn't there.
I think the two stars for me, and other people may have a different opinion, were Pogba, who had a little bit more hype because of the way he come from Le Havre and the way he played. He looked like a man. Playing against children, and Ravel just because of the quality he had. But there were so many other players in that team that were superb.
I mean, Tunnicliffe won Player of the Year that year, didn't he?
Start on Ryan Tunnicliffe, one of my favourite players in that team. Such a great young player, but just weren't at that level to something not even Premier League level. And it's so difficult to know and to make that step up, even if you've absolutely smashing it for an academy, to get into the first team, whether that's at Manchester United or another Premier League team. Yeah,
definitely. You've got to temper your expectations, and it's not to say that if you're not standing out from a young age, then you're not going to make it. But it's definitely not as simple as he looks decent, let's throw him in. You know, it takes time, and especially for someone like Sekou Kone, who's adapting to a completely new environment. He's only played in African youth systems, which is, they work very differently. And so there's been a lot for him to learn. But he's really starting to come into his own at this stage in the season. I think in earlier games, he'd get lost a little bit and wouldn't really be able to assert himself on some of the games. But now he's kind of ever present in the midfield, and he's always getting stuck into challenges and always looking to play forward. And he's been really bright. And again, it was a brilliant performance from him. And I think people are noticing and getting a little bit excited. So it will take time with him. I think no need to rush him into the first team this season. I think there's a lot for him to gain from under-21 football. And I'm enjoying him playing. And like I said last week, it's a breath of fresh air, because a lot of these players that have come through English academies have kind of had it trained into them to be a little bit more reserved on the ball and not always look for the killer pass and not always look to go forward. And there is a lot of virtue in that. But he hasn't had that education.
Good.
And it's a joy to watch, because every time he's on the ball, he's doing something to move the ball forward and to move his team forward. Whether that's carrying the ball or, playing these intricate balls between the lines. It's such an exciting player to watch. And it was a quieter game for Chido Obi, who's someone that we speak about a lot. I think what we see is oppositions are very aware of his goal scoring pedigree and the threat that he carries, and so often you've got 2 or 3 or 4 players kind of teaming up on him to minimise the time he's got on the ball and make sure that he doesn't get in goal scoring oppositions. And that's something that he's going to have to learn to overcome if he wants to become, a first-team striker, because it will happen at whatever age group he's playing at because of how kind of lethal he is in front of goal. So definitely a quieter game for him, but he was still able to pick up an assist. Spurs goalkeeper was trying to play out from the back and he just hesitated for a few seconds, and I think Chido Obi smelled blood and he went for it, and a kind of Ahmad-esque pickpocketing.
They love that, don't they? Spurs goalkeepers trying to play out from the back and letting United grab a goal.
It's their signature move.
Yeah, I think it is.
Chido Obi was able to dispossess him, and then the ball kind of fell loose to Malachi Sharp, and he had an easy task of just tapping into an open net. So easy as that. And then the second goal came from Jack Moorhouse. I think it was Sekou Kone who released him in the midfield, and he drove about, I think from his own half, just sprinted forward, was able to create the separation from his marker, and finished with a really composed finish in front of goal. It's just such an impressive performance from him.
Yeah,
really, really encouraged by the way he's improving and the way he's just come back from injury and doesn't look like he's lost any pace.
So nice, sort of solid, comfortable
2-0 win
against Spurs.
Yeah,
say that this weekend.
Yeah,
the first team, wouldn't you?
Definitely. It wouldn't be too bad. Spurs had a few chances of their own, and it was quite an open-ended game for large parts. But Eli Harrison deserves a lot of credit for keeping the clean sheet for United. Obviously, a highly rated goalkeeper who was at loan at Chester for the first half of the season, but he's come back now to be in and amongst the kind of first team setup in training, and he's such a trusty shot stopper. It's rare that you see a mistake from him or that you see him concede from a half chance. So he's really reliable, and he kept the clean sheet for United, and not much more to talk about, to be honest. Just a comfortable win.
Do you get much chance to watch some of our loan players, the players that we sent out on loan?
This season, I need to be doing a better job, to be honest. Obviously, yesterday, Ethan Ennis started against Crystal Palace, but a difficult game to really showcase your abilities in. For Doncaster Rovers, who weren't on the ball much and couldn't provide that great of a competition for Palace. So I think he got hooked at half time, unfortunately. But at some point we'll do. We could do like a loanee review.
You took the words right out of my mouth there, Finn. Yeah, it'd be good to have a little roundup, wouldn't it, and have a look at our, because we've got quite a few players out on loan, haven't we? And it'd be good to we've been asked, I think a few people have mentioned it in the chat, so we'll get you on that, and we'll have a bit of a catch up on that over the next week or so. Finn, great chatting to you as always. Can I just ask you, just curious, was there one player you've watched that you thought would make it that didn't quite reach the levels that? Because I was just talking there about Ryan Sundercliffe, and I was very rude. I don't think that's yours. I think wonder you've watched a lot of academy football over the last few years. Was there a player you thought he's going to be one to watch that didn't quite reach the heights?
There's two players
that
I can give you.
Yeah.
First is Ethan Galbraith.
You and Dave Pritt, right? I tell you what.
This is from the Dave
This is
Pritt
why
School
you
of
two are
Thought.
tailor-made for Academy Review. Because Dave Pritt, honestly, you think he was related to Ethan Galbraith. He absolutely loves the kid.
Well, me, Dave, and pretty much anyone who watched that team, because he was a joy to watch.
Where did he end up? He went to Salford, didn't he?
Went to Salford.
I missed it. He scored for Salford. I was at that game.
Yeah.
I got there late.
He only scores bangers as well.
I missed his goal.
Well, he's now at Leyton Orient, and he started against City.
So close as well, wasn't it? Well, so close, but they made a game of it, didn't they, at least?
Yeah. He was a player that I loved watching, and that was one of the first youth sides that I really paid attention to and kind of watched week in, week out. And he was always at the heart of everything positive that team did. He was such a kind of classic deep-lying playmaker. I say he was in past tense, he still is, and I think he's still got a career at the top level.
Yeah.
But maybe a bit more of a kind of slow burner than I would have first assumed, because I thought he could step into that first team, especially with, I think it was Fred and McTominay at the time who...
I think if you go back to old Academy reviews, there may have been those comments being made at the time, to be fair to you.
Maybe it was a bit naive, but I was saying just chuck him in because he's got so much quality. And another player who, no matter the opposition, would just shine. And he never seemed to be given that chance. The second player I'd say is Isaac Hansen-Aron.
Yeah, another one.
Norwegian.
Rap a lot about on this channel.
Yeah, he was that summer when we signed Garnacho, Camboala, Radek Vitek, Alvaro Fernandez.
Yeah.
These are big names who are all, a lot of them are, first teamers at European clubs. And Isaac Hansen-Aron, for me, he was head and shoulders above the rest of those signings. especially in that first year for the under-18s. He came in and just blew me away. I think Kobbie Mainoo was integrated into that side about 6 months later, and for a lot of the time that they played in the same team, this is hypocritical or contradictory because I said a bit ago that Kobbie Mainoo stood out head and shoulders above the rest, but Isaac Hansen-Aaron for the earlier days when they were playing together was kind of on the same level.
Right.
And yeah, such a silky midfielder, kind of got bits of Iniesta about him.
Wow.
In his kind of low centre of gravity and shiftiness on the ball. And I think the problem for him, the reason that he didn't kick on is because he'd outgrown under-18 football much earlier than he should have, and the area of improvement for him was his kind of physical side of the game. And I think United made a mistake because I think they thought he would develop physically if he stayed in academy football.
Right.
Whereas I think he could have been in first team training 6 months after joining.
Right.
He's one of those players that he had nothing really to gain from playing at that level. I mean, he played first team football in Norway at 15. He broke Odegaard's record. So this was honestly, I there's a scout online that I speak to, Football Talent Scout on Twitter. He's got a huge following and respected as one of the best kind of online scouting platforms. And we used to always speak about him because he said he was a player that he loves. He's someone with genuine world-class potential. And I think it's such a shame. I think he's playing in the second Danish division now.
Right.
He went to Werder Bremen from United and just didn't get given a chance again. I didn't follow him that closely there, so I'm not sure exactly what happened there. But yeah, you'd hope that, again, it's just another case of being a late bloomer and he ends up getting his chance, but something's gone wrong there. And it's never nice to see because he was someone that really made me fall in love with watching academy football, for sure.
Yeah, there's a few like that. And it is a little bit sad when you think where they end up, and
it's sobering.
Second tier of Danish football, nobody expected it. Expected better things there, but we'll see. Something might, he might be another Jesse Lingard where he's
sometimes it just takes time.
It does. Finn, always a pleasure. Make sure you go and check Finn out. Academy Scoop. He's going to be on the channel a lot more as well. So make sure you are hitting like, share, and subscribe. That's been Finn. I've been Jay. This has been Academy Review. Thanks for watching.